longer term that people actually flip, pardon the term, that they flip their uses of other communications, other unified communications media and move more into video as a more primary kind of communications medium?
I do, and what's going to happen is it's going to take probably a few creative ways that we use it internally. So it's going to take a few early adopters internally. But once that happens, then it's going to become a little bit contagious. So I definitely think that we will see it adopted, and like telepresence, it'll go through the same phases.
Right, and maybe just kind of to wrap, you know, one kind of final question, since you guys have so much end user experience with this. Did telepresence start in the executive suite and work down? Were there certain segments or clusters of people at McKesson who gravitated? You mentioned, for example, high performance team, people who were really thrust together and asked to collaborate to do things. But was there any pattern there for people? Right? It's you know, it's kind of like and if you think about something, you might be thinking, I want to use telepresence. Who would I be successful with using it?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it did start off mostly in with executives, but mostly because I think that the types of meetings that originally telepresence really was geared toward were static meetings. So it were meetings where there's like talking heads, where there's presentations, where you're sitting down and there isn't a lot of movement.
Kind of like the original radio plays when people stood in front of mics and read scripts. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's
and then you're right. And then that's what the first thing they did on film. Yeah.
It's a good analogy. And then it started to get more dynamic. Some of the engineers, some of the people that needed to collaborate and draw on whiteboards and were standing up. Those people started to see the value of telepresence. So it kind of grew, not so much because it was geared toward executives, but just because the first meetings that were envisioned were more executive, sit around, look at each other, and do the presentation. So I'm watching the whole spectrum of meetings get to be much more dynamic, where people are getting up and they're using whiteboards and they're just acting as if they're in the
good electronic whiteboard product would be a nice add-on feature.
Yes, that would be a nice